Zeapon has just released a brand new series of sliders called the Evo. It's compact, it's very easy to use, and the price is very attractive. Let's break down the specs and I will share with you my real-world experience to see if it's worth adding to your kit. Let's do a quick unboxing of the Evo Slider. There are two different versions of the Evo Slider, and Zeapon sent me the smaller Evo D40 for this review. The bigger version is called D60, which I will talk about more a bit later. Opening the box, the first thing you see are a few papers advertising different Zeapon sliders and other products. Then we have the Evo Slider itself, and I was quite surprised by how shiny it is. Apart from a few plastic buttons, knob and covers at both ends, the rest of the slider is completely metal. It has a nicely polished, shiny finish that looks simple and minimalistic. It reminds me of the beautiful Sigma BF camera. For the cheapest motorized slider from Zeapon, much cheaper than the Micro 3, and even less than Motorized Micro 2, I was surprised by how solid it looks and feels. I'll talk about the design and features in more detail later. Also in the box, there is a basic carry bag. It's not padded, but it's still better than having nothing at all to protect the slider. Then there's a proper printed user manual, not just a quick start guide. These days, most companies skip this, so I was pleasantly surprised. Maybe I'm old school, but I do like having a real physical manual. Lastly, there is a tool and a spare belt. In my experience with Zeapon sliders, I've never needed to replace a belt, but it's nice to have one in case something ever goes wrong. And that's pretty much all we have in the box. Now let's take a closer look at the Evo Slider. As mentioned earlier, it's made almost entirely of metal, giving it a very solid feel. But despite the metal construction, this slider is not that heavy. The Evo D40 weighs only about 1.5 kg, almost half the weight of Zeapon's smallest Micro 4 E500 slider. With a battery installed, the D40's length is roughly the same as the Micro 4 E500. Speaking of batteries, the Evo uses Sony NP-F style batteries. You can get up to 15 hours of runtime if you use a F970 battery running at medium speed. You can also power the slider using a USB-C PD power source. The D40's total travel is 240mm. That might not sound like much, but for my work that requires a slider, which is mostly shooting some product B-roll for this channel, and some other small projects, is more than enough. If you need more travel, the larger D60 offers 440mm travel. But otherwise, the two Evo sliders are identical in design, features, and load capacity. The maximum load capacity is 5 kg horizontally and 2.5 kg vertically. It can easily handle most mirrorless camera setups, even vertically, as long as you're not mounting a huge telephoto lens. Operation is very simple with the Evo Slider. First, move the slider to your start position. Press the A button. Then move the slider to the end position and press the B button. You can then press play and run a single pass, or you press the loop button and then play to have it run between A and B point indefinitely. The speed of the slider is adjustable from the very slow 0.5mm per second all the way up to 57mm per second, which is very quick for a slider of this price and size. You adjust the speed using the stepless dial next to the power button. You can change the speed even when the slider is moving, and the slider speed will change smoothly. So you can do a speed ramp middle of your shot. Just remember to turn the dial gently to avoid shaking the camera. The slider can be used directly on a desk or mounted on a tripod. You can also attach support arms on each end to prevent tilting. The support arms are not included, so you need to buy them separately. I was just using the one from my other Zeapon slider. Honestly, the smaller D40 doesn't really need them. The longer D60 might benefit more. The slider doesn't have any screen, likely to keep costs down, but since the slider has such a simple interface, you don't really need a screen. For basic AB moves, you can operate it entirely from the onboard controls. But if you need more advanced features like time-lapse or stop motion, you can connect the slider to the Zeapon Lab App. You can also set up multiple waypoints as well from the app. But I noticed multiple waypoints still have a pause between waypoints rather than seamlessly transition from one to other. This is something I have raised with Zeapon multiple times, but unfortunately they haven't changed. On the side of the slider, there is a stepless adjustment control which you can adjust from -3 to +3. This will change the angle of one of the track, and that mechanically rotates the camera as the slider moves. A positive number setting would turn the camera outward for panoramas. Negative number turns the camera inward to track a subject, which is great for product shots. Set up a tracking product shot is very simple. First, you center the slider, aim the camera forward and make sure your subject is centered. Then move the slider to the start position, adjust the control until your subject is centered again. Then lock it and set your AB port. Now the camera will follow your subject throughout the move. Since the rotation is limited by the mechanical design, I was a bit worried there may not be enough rotation when your subject is at close distance, which is what I usually do when shooting product B-roll in this tiny studio. But I found that even with the subject only 35 cm away, the slider could still follow my subject easily, and I could actually move the subject even a little bit closer if I want. So I think that should be good enough for most people. There are markings for the slider movement and rotation for precise adjustments. There's also a 1/4-inch thread on the side for accessories like a monitor or a LED light, which is a nice touch. The Evo slider is very quiet. When the slider is moving at 50% speed, the motor is virtually silent even when I was recording using the camera's built-in microphone in a quiet indoor space. Okay, I'm now recording the audio using the camera's built-in microphone, and I have the slider set to 50% speed. At 100% speed, there is a bit of noise, but it's still quite low level and quieter than most other sliders I have used before. Okay, now I have set the speed to 100%. The slider is also very smooth, and I will show you some example video now. All the buttons and controls are nearly flush with the top surface of the slider, with only the small speed dial protruding slightly. The battery also mounts on the side, not at the top. That means the slider can travel its full range without the camera hitting anything, no matter what tripod head or setup you use, or even with no tripod head at all. So what do I think about this Zeapon Evo Slider? And who do I think this slider is for? I think If you are someone who wants a compact slider, you don't need a lot of fancy features, you just want something that is easy to use and don't want to spend a lot of money, then this Evo slider could be very suitable to you. Not having the double distance design means the Evo slider can't offer the same travel distance as Zeapon's Micro series sliders. But the much lower price makes this slider a much better choice for people who have a limited budget and still want a nice motorized slider. Another option is to get the non-motorized Micro 4 slider, so you can enjoy the double distance feature without paying a lot of money, and then you can still upgrade to the motorized slider by buying the motorized module later on. However, one big selling point of the Evo slider is how easy you can set up the AB port, and you can also set up the camera rotation very quickly. This is something pretty unique to this Zeapon Evo slider.